Alright, so now we're going to be learning about, from this Diadochi War series, about the Gallic invasion of Greece. So the Gauls have just shown up out of nowhere, seemingly out of nowhere to attack. So dang.
Interesting and unexpected aspects of the early Hellenistic period.
We took our brand new software company.
As we have shown in our Alexander series and Balkan peoples videos, the Balkan region north of Hellas was an accumulation of various tribal confederacies and kingdoms during this period, like the Thracians, Dacians, and Illyrians. On the northern edges of the Balkans, some Celtic tribes had been living for centuries and were in mercantile contact with their southern neighbours. On occasion, they would even make contact with Greek rulers, like when they sent an embassy to Alexander the Great after he subdued a Thracian revolt. During the 3rd century BCE, the Celts began to move southward in organized numbers, exploiting the weakness of people like the Illyrians due to their constant fighting with the Greeks. We do not know why they chose to move southward in such organized numbers, but the reasons were likely the same as those of Greek colonists during the Archaic period in the 8th to 6th centuries BCE, the need to relieve population pressure and wealth. Thus, from the regions of Moravia, they moved first to Illyria, where they defeated some Illyrian tribes, as well as to Dacia, where they also achieved both victories and defeats. Eventually, in 310 BCE, a daring Celtic general called Mollistomos tried to push deep inside Illyria and subdue the entire region, but an organized Dardanian force defeated him. Cassander was following the situation with some care to his north, despite the constant wars with the Greek polis. Thus, he set up a treaty with the Illyrians to assist them in the event of a crisis. One more attempt was made by the Celts in 298 BCE, this time through Thrace, but here too they were defeated by Cassander himself. Some of the remnants of the Celts ended up in the Serdica region, where they set up a settlement that would one day become the illustrious capital of Bulgaria, Sofia. By the time when Lysimachos' kingdom collapsed due to the dynastic struggles, some Celtic raiders saw the opportunity to try to settle further south. In 281 BCE, they made some initial overtures, but withdrew due to a lack of numbers. In 180 BCE, some Celtic elites amassed 85,000 men and moved from the lands of Pannonia for a large-scale expedition. They split into 3 large divisions aimed at attacking all 3 major hubs of the Balkans. One leader, Kerethrios, was successful against the Thracians. Another, under the leaders Brenos and Akikorios, were dispatched to Paeonia. A commander named Bolgios moved towards Illyria and Macedon. The first 2 contingents seemed to have been successful, but Bolgios had a more interesting combat tour. In Macedon, Seleucos' killer, Ptolemy Karaunos, had just assumed control of Macedon and was determined to keep it. Thus, he moved with his forces to meet Bolgios in battle. We know little of this battle, but we know that Ptolemy was not only defeated, but decapitated, and his head was put on a spike as a trophy. Bolgios would have moved further south and plundered more, but he was defeated by a Macedonian named Sosthenes. Sosthenes was then defeated by Brenos, who had defeated the Paeonians and had moved south. The Celtic general plundered much of northern Greece and returned to the north triumphant.
You know, Ptolemy brought that on himself. Dude really murdered Seleucus and then, like, couldn't even hold his gains. Immediately gets killed in, like, the first battle as the newly appointed king of Macedon. That's insane.
Emboldened by this victory, the generals began preparations to try one more invasion of Greece. In 279 BCE, Brenos amassed a large number of Celts and began to march down into Greek territory. Our source, Pausanias, claims that the army included 152,000 infantry and 24,000 cavalry, although he clarifies that as each horseman had 2 grooms, the real number was 61,200 men. Alongside him was Akikorios, and the two were confident that they could repeat their previous successes in rampaging through Greece. During that time, Macedon was still in turmoil, as Demetrios' son, Antigonos II Gonatas, was not in the country and would only come to the throne in 276 BCE. Thus, it fell to the Hellenic polis to try to manage the defense of their territories deep in the south of Hellas. As the Celts passed through Macedon with ease, an alliance of southern Greek forces merged to try and stop them upon hearing of their raids into Thessaly. The Athenians sent 500 cavalry and 1,000 infantry, as well as warships under General Callippos. The Boeotians sent 10,000 infantry and 500 cavalry, commanded by Cephisodotus, Theoridas, Diogenes, and Lysander. Megara sent 700 soldiers, while Phocas sent 500 cavalry and 3,000 infantry under Critobulus and Antiochus. The Locrians also sent 700 infantry under Midias. Alongside them were 500 mercenaries from Macedon, hired by Antigonos II and commanded by Aristodemos the Macedonian, and 500 from Seleucid Syria, hired by Antiochus I Soter and under the command of Tilisarchos. The Greeks decided to block off the famous pass at Thermopylae, where their ancestors had fought the Persians before, and where the Lamian War's famous battle took place at the start of this video. They also sent 1,000 light infantry to stop the Celts in the nearby river Sperchios by blowing up the local bridges. However, Brenos waited until nightfall and sent a contingent of his men to swim across the river through the nearby marshes by using their shields as rafts or walking through. The Greeks realized this and then retreated back to the Thermopylae Pass. Brenos ordered a bridge to be built, moved to the nearby city of Heraclea, and promptly besieged it. The Aetolians defended the city, for it had been forced into their league the year before. Thus, Brenos packed up his troops before turning towards Thermopylae. He reached the passes, much like Xerxes had before him, and initiated an attack at dawn. The Greeks moved tactically and silently forward, and engaged with the Celtic infantry in close-range combat, while the Celtic cavalry had to wait in the rear. According to Pausanias, the Celts were disorganized, though this may be his prejudice against non-Hellenes talking. The Greek light infantry also shot arrows and slingshots at the enemy, causing many casualties on the first day. Many Celts were said to continue fighting even after being hit by arrows or spears. At the same time, the Athenian warships bombarded the enemy from the Malian Gulf nearby, causing even more damage. The Celts eventually decided to retreat in tatters. The end of the day saw many Celts die, as they had little in terms of body armor besides their shields. Pausanias claims only 40 Greeks died, and that the Celts didn't come for their dead. Brenos then devised a plan to terrorize the Aetolian countryside and force the Aetolian contingent to leave. He sent 40,000 infantry and 800 cavalry that crossed through southern Greece into Aetolia, where they began to rampage and commit mass atrocities. The Aetolians left Thermopylae and followed suit. One city, Callion, was brutally destroyed before they could arrive. However, when they did arrive, they joined forces with their wives, who were said to fight more furiously than them, and managed to inflict a victory so decisive that half of the Celtic contingent was destroyed. Back in Thermopylae, the battle continued until Brenos discovered the path the Persians had crossed centuries before.
Oh my goodness, why does any— oh, wait a minute. Wait, I may have spoken too soon. Wait, give me a second.
Taking 40,000 men, he moved into the pass and used a misty day to surprise the Greeks. The Phocians, who were guarding the pass—
yeah, why does anyone fight here anymore? I think, Thermopylae seems to, always be a place where they lose, like when Antiochus III got his butt kicked by the Greeks here. The 300 were defeated, though they did make a great last stand. And now here, it's like, maybe Thermopylae ain't a great place to make stands,
did not realize the onslaught until it was too late. They fought off the Celts valiantly.
Dang, the Celts are, like, making a lot of, like, big moves. Like, I'm kind of beyond impressed. They just showed up and started wreaking havoc in the Greek world.
Until they retreated. By the time Brenos crossed the pass, the rest of the Greeks had departed. Brenos then set his eyes on Delphi, Greece's most important oracle, with a large amount of wealth. Here, Pausanias' account is full of fanciful tales, so we will have to tread carefully with our description. The Celts, whose army was likely the remnants of the existing force, arrived in the city of Delphi and caused the terrified locals to flee to the oracle. Upon hearing of the onslaught of the Gauls, an indeterminate number of Phocians, as well as 1,200 Aetolians under Philomelos, arrived to defend the city. The battle's formations are unknown to us. Pausanias takes time to describe legends of local heroes from mythology appearing to help the Hellenes, as well as a blizzard that caused fear amongst the Celts. In the morning, the Phocians, who understood the terrain, climbed around the snowy hills of Mount Parnassos and began to shoot volleys at the Celts from the rear. the Celts were caught off guard. They fought valiantly against both fronts, but eventually Brenos was wounded by a javelin, causing chaos amongst the troops. The disorderly retreat led the Celts back to Spercheios, while they suffered 6,000 casualties. They camped at night near the river, while they met with Echikorios, who had stayed in the region of Thermopylae. But according to Pausanias, a panic took over them during the evening, and they began to kill each other. This is ascribed to the god Pan, but the fact that the Celts thought their enemies spoke Greek suggests that there might be some sort of psychological warfare by the Hellenes. 10,000 Celts were killed during this panic, and Brenos drank undiluted wine and died. Under threat of savage Aetolian attacks, the remaining Celts packed up and left. The remaining Celts moved to Thrace and settled there for a while. By 277 BCE, they were bound to face the wrath of an Epigonos, the ascending Antigonos II Gonatas. During this time, the son of Demetrios was biding his time to try to take over the throne of Macedon, while Sosthenes had taken over the regency of Ptolemy Karanos. Antigonos sailed towards the Hellespont to try to cross into Hellas. Celts settled the territory of their landing, and the Greeks were determined to defeat them. The Celts were somewhat organized and were under the command of Kerethrios, one of Brenos' generals. They saw the Greeks land and so prepared themselves to attack them. However, Antigonos was prepared and devised an ambush. He left his camp and hid in the surrounding region. When the Celts attacked and rampaged through the camp, the Greeks bided their time and then pounced, causing a mass slaughter of the remaining Celts. We know little of this battle, but in a typical pattern, the Celts were said to be defeated in the presence of the ghosts of Greek heroes. This, alongside the outlandish claims of Greek authors that Celts were either bloodthirsty monsters or just unintelligent guerrillas, makes describing these battles difficult. What we do know is that the Celts were soundly defeated, and that their remnants stayed in Thrace and were slowly Hellenized. Antigonos would fail at first against Sosthenes, but would finally achieve victory a year later in 276 BCE. Meanwhile, some remnants of the Celts ended up in Asia Minor, where they rampaged freely until they faced Antiochus I in 275 to 269 BCE in the Battle of the Elephants. The only thing we know about this battle is that the Celts panicked upon seeing elephants for the first time, and were soundly defeated. The survivors managed to survive with various alliances until they settled around Ankara in the 230s BCE, and they founded the Kingdom of Galatia, a Gaulo-Hellenistic polity in the heart of cosmopolitan Asia Minor. The Antigonids returned to the throne of Macedon and ruled until the Romans conquered Greece, something we have discussed in our previous series. The new era had finally been born, the Hellenistic Age.
That is cool. We are finally at the Hellenistic Age. So much freaking fighting and death. Now we have the final stretch, which is about, let's see, what, 30? Over 30-ish minutes. So, yeah, guys, this has just been really great, and we're gonna end the series tomorrow with the Ptolemaic Seleucid Syrian Wars. Till then.